The MTG podcast is a virtual space for women and men in the tech and creative industries.
Tune in as we put it all on the table, sharing authentic life truths as we sustain and empower each other in search of our tribe.
We're more than a designer. We're more than our name badge. We're more than the work we produce.
Welcome to the More Than Graphics podcast.
We're that tribe.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the More Than Graphics podcast. I'm Danielle.
I'm Priscilla.
And today we are the flowery ladies of MTG. And I love the fact that as we talk about this topic today, specifically on Master, I love this idea that we're going to be deep diving into some really core conversations, but also just celebrating women doing big things like putting out books and publishing life works and putting out our say and creating space for more of us. So just to kind of, before we kick it off, I kind of always want to kick back with Priscilla. How are you doing? How is life? I feel like we haven't gelled in a minute.
Oh gosh, yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. No, I've got, I've got some stuff kind of going on, but I'm getting everything situated, and now I'm in the feast. I'm in the feast of the feast famine. So
I love that.
Everything all situated, Post-it notes everywhere.
That sounds a lot like my bathroom right now. Like I just feel like I just pick up random ones and be like, "What's it today, Doc? Like, what's it gonna be?" Yeah. Don't forget your lunch. Okay. Like, there we go. Every little bit helps in these spaces.
Yes.
I am definitely kind of on a little bit of a chill mode from a huge rush of events. I have a lot of events going on right now. So if you catch me either the speaking events, if you catch me online, let me know, screenshot it and say, "Hey, I saw you." And I'll be like, okay. Just everything from obviously on digital marketing to just being a woman of color in this field. So I love the fact that I get to speak a little bit from a place of somewhat knowledge. I guess I've been here around for a while.
Somewhat knowledge.
Just a little.
You can't say that. When I look up to you, you can't say somewhat knowledge. I'll be like, I got to go find.
But this is that place. Right? Yeah, but this is that place for me. Like I just kind of enjoying these fruits of labor, right? Also kind of in a feast place for me. So live it up, ladies, wherever you are today. Live it up. Celebrate your damn self. If there is anything else, like in regards to cool news, MTG got nominated for an award. We got nominated for Podcast of the Year by the Blueprint Awards. I'm pretty excited about that because I've never really won an award on behalf of a podcast. We produce them all the time, but this is the first one where it's really kind of hit personal for me, as this is a personal lifestyle mantra. More Than Graphics comes from that personal mantra for myself to be more than just the graphics that I create. So I'm super excited about whatever comes from that, whether I win or not. I don't care. Like I got to make the short list, right?
Oh, and I love whenever you share that type of stuff. It makes me so excited because I'm like, I know her.
I think I'm on like the F list, right? Like the H list. You know, there's always the A and the B list. I'm way down there.
It's okay. You're on a list. It doesn't matter which one. You're on a list. Right?
Right. Well, I wanted to kind of dive into today's guest because she is amazing in her own right. And I kind of wanted to share this before we introduce her. I wanted to actually read a review that struck me from her book that she has published. I'm going to read that out loud. This book gives a voice to all women and inspires them to know they are not alone in their struggles. The step-by-step analysis and tools provided allow for a new approach to standing in your power and speaking your truth. This is from a reviewer who reviewed Speak Kindly, You're Listening. And I think this is the perfect time to introduce our guest, Dr. Jessica Metcalfe.
Dr. Jessica Metcalf is a strategic leadership and workplace culture consultant, award-winning international speaker, and best-selling author of Speak Kindly, You're Listening. She is a former dental oncologist and education director, where she started teaching the medical and dental community how to improve a patient's quality of life post-cancer therapy. Now, Dr. Jessica develops top leaders, entrepreneurs, and C-suites by improving their quality of life by elevating and supporting their teams and culture through burnout, imposter syndrome, and psychological safety. Thank you. Thank you. That was my added.
Welcome, Dr. Jessica.
Thank you so much. I am so excited for today's conversation. First, I just want to say, just the light that exudes from both of you, it's palpable, and I appreciate that, because at times we don't get to hear that or see that on podcasts. So thank you for creating that space for other women.
Oh, I love it. I already know this is going to be an excellent episode already. Okay, prep tissues. Okay, I got tissues. I'm ready. I really want to know, like, there's so much that you do on such a deep level, and not only on, and again, I talk about deep meaning literally on not a below surface level, right? Us as women, especially walk into the space that we get paid by. Sometimes we're paid for our brain, we're paid for our hands, we're paid for all the things that we do and produce. And a lot of times we don't feel always safe in those spaces to be able to feel confident enough to live out into the skill sets that we are born with. And I think this is a great segue into kind of talking a little bit deeper about the way that we psychologically feel safe. And we talk about this on the podcast all the time. Like, we say that we're a virtual safe space for women in tech, but what does that really look like? What does that safety look like in other spaces? So I'd love to kind of dig a little bit deeper in how do you define psychological safety?
So psychological safety is when you feel confident and comfortable to be able to share what's going on, whether it's a problem that you notice that needs to be addressed, or an idea that you want to bring forth to the table. And at times when we think about positivity or toxic positivity, we think of leadership as always being nice and kind, and that aspect of it. But that's not necessarily the case. Yes, we want to be kind to others. However, there are those moments where we're going to have those difficult conversations. So you can't just throw on a smile all the time and expect things to go well. So psychological safety is being able to feel comfortable having those difficult conversations and not being scared walking into that meeting or that conversation, then thinking automatically, oh, I'm going to get fired, or, oh, they're going to think I'm stupid, or I shouldn't be the one to talk about or bring this up. So psychological safety allows us to grow as individuals, allows ourselves to advance in the workplace and in our own life. And that gives us the opportunity to kind of gauge, okay, well, where do I want to be in the future? And am I working in an environment with people that give me that psychological safety?
And here I am taking notes. So this is something that's ongoing. We will sit here and nod, and I will smile, but the whole time I'm like, like taking all the notes. We're doing the whole Kermit the Frog thing. I absolutely love what you say specifically about being in a safe space. Again, being able to share ideas. That is such something we take for granted, honestly, in these first world countries. I really empathize to women all the time to mean what they say and say what they mean. And a lot of times, especially now, like we've come into this era of women where we're being more bold about what we want, and we are being more vocal about what's important to us, not just the cookie cutter things that we said we want. A comfortable living. We want to be able to support our loved ones and our family members, but it goes deeper than that. I want to be able to tell myself that I am important. I want to be able to tell myself that I am capable, I am smart, I am, all those things. So I love the fact too that you take it one step, going deeper layers, further than the surface, and kind of really addressing the need and safety of self, the acceptance of self. And so I feel like it's so inspiring. I know you talk about this a lot in your book. And I'm really kind of excited to kind of talk about that a little bit. But I also know that you come from this background of dental oncology, of directing, education. And I just kind of want to echo a little bit around that. What lessons were you able to take from that background and really kind of apply this in this new path for yourself?
Yeah, so my interest within treating cancer patients was always around improving patients' quality of life. So I loved being able to sit with my patients and have conversations with them, whether it was pre-cancer therapy or afterwards. And there were moments and times where patients would have multiple appointments in the day. Maybe you were getting your blood work done in the morning, and then you had to go for your chemo, then you had to see your radiation oncologist, and then next thing you know, you're like, oh my goodness, I have to see the dentist, really? And so I'd be that person who's that added onto their list amongst everything else that's going on. And of course, not everyone likes the dentist to begin with. Now add on a cancer diagnosis, and you have to go see a dentist. And so what I made a part of my practice is, well, I just want to be able to sit and listen and be that support for that individual, especially once all of the dental check boxes had been checked and we've gone through everything. Well, then I'm going to be that support for that person as well. And what we don't realize at times is the definition around palliative care. And so palliative care, the definition, doesn't just mean end of life. It means managing long-term side effects. So whether you were diagnosed with breast cancer or head and neck cancer or lung cancer, and let's say that you had some sort of side effects that affected your head and neck region and you were going to see the dentist becomes a part of that role of your support indefinitely. And now when we're thinking of long-term, because now you're in survivorship, well, you're never going to go back to what it was before, because now not only do you have a different perspective on your own life, but you've just gone through something that's quite traumatic and challenging and difficult, and now you're out on the other side. And so what does stepping into a new way of seeing you look like? And what I started to do was teach the medical and dental community how to improve patients' quality of life post-cancer therapy. And at the same time that I was doing that, I was navigating my own struggles with burnout. And at that time, I was diagnosed with depression and a generalized anxiety disorder. And in dentistry and in medicine, people don't necessarily talk as openly about mental health because there's still stigma associated with it. So when I finally got the help that I needed for me, I felt totally ashamed. Here I was, the doctor, helping others, and now I needed my own help. And then there's always this statistic around, and I've had people tell me this since I decided I wanted to be a dentist at 14, is don't dentists have one of the highest suicide rates? And we're still considered in the top 3 category. And when I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, I thought this can't be the norm that we just accept, and that's it. So along with improving quality of life for the patient, I started to sprinkle in ways on how the clinician can start to improve their quality of life. And that's when I started to dive into, and being at the cancer center is really easy from a research perspective to navigate. Okay, well, why as women do we have such a negative internal voice? And that's when imposter syndrome, perfectionism, people pleasing, burnout, and I started to try to find the links, because we talk about them very independently of each other, but I knew that they were all connected, and I just needed to figure out how they were connected. So then that way, when I started teaching others, I could start explaining that. And then that's how the book came into fruition, because when I started to navigate, it wasn't just dentistry anymore. It was high achieving women who pushed themselves, who believed in themselves, but had that negative internal voice at times. And what I wanted to do was to create that space where now it wasn't just women within one specific profession, but I was able to then connect with women across a diverse sector of jobs.
Wow. Yeah, I love this. I love the way this, and then thank you for your transparency. First off, it is never easy, right? It gets better the more times that we share it, but it's never easy. So thank you. I really am attached to. I'm really attached to the statistic. This is something I kind of knew of, but it was always in like a sort of joking manner, which is really sad. But yeah, this dentists have one of the top 3 suicide rates. Like, is that correct? Is that?
Yeah, that's correct. So we sit at number 3 currently. Now, depending on who's done the study, because there's so many different across like the globe at this point in time. And so the last time that the CDC, they actually broke it down on white collar jobs versus blue collar jobs. And so vets, family physicians, and dentists are top 3 in white collar jobs right now.
Wow. Yeah. I really did not know how deep that ran. Wow. And so I love that you also encompass this challenge, right? And to this kind of call to arms of why do we as women have an internal negative voice? Like, why is that? And the fact that you kind of address this within the book, but I also like the fact that it's an ongoing conversation. There's a ... after that. So I really I would love to kind of hear a little bit just from you, like as far as negative talking for women and women that talk to themselves in a negative way. What's some support or advice that you can give to them in regards to just some easy steps to kind of notice that behavior maybe, and maybe try to take steps away from it?
Yeah, so this is so fascinating because some of us don't notice how we choose to speak to ourselves. It's there. And when we're in our quiet thoughts or sitting in front of the TV or driving, we may hear it a little bit louder. So, usually around moments of times when it's a little bit quieter, that's when we notice that inner voice, or our thoughts can turn quite negative based on the situation. So you could be a perfectionist or a catastrophizer, and during those times of quietness, and that is one of the reasons why we also bombard ourselves with so much information or so much social media, our phones and everything, or even conversations with family and friends, is because we just don't feel comfortable sitting with our own thoughts. And so I challenge women to start to pay attention to what they're saying. So when someone comes to me and says, "Oh, but Jessica, like, I already know what I'm saying. I'm angry at myself that I can't catch it." Well, it's been with you your entire life. You're not all of a sudden going to just be able to catch what it's saying. So the way that I like to think of it is trying to understand, okay, let's look at it from a bird's eye view first and understand why and when and how that voice comes up. That's the most important aspect, because then you can start to navigate, okay, and you can prep for when that voice is going to come, but you have to know when it potentially is going to come. So, for example, maybe you know that you've had a really bad sleep. And so, on those mornings, because our emotions are usually more heightened, especially the negative emotions that we can feel, is that we know if we've had a really bad sleep, that voice is going to be louder. We build in a little bit more self compassion during that time. Maybe there's a person who we either receive texts or emails from, and as soon as that person hits our inbox, that automatically starts that chain of thoughts being like, oh, what is this person going to say about me or to me, and are they going to belittle me? So we automatically go into that. So when we start to pay attention to what our triggers are and the time of day, when it happens, who are we around, what did we just do? Like, did we present a project to a superior or to a coworker, and because it wasn't what we defined as perfect, we walked away only seeing what went poorly instead of reflecting on how can we improve or what went really well. And when we start to pay attention to that aspect, then we can start to shift our words. So we're not going to all of a sudden change the voice altogether, because we're not going to believe if all of a sudden we step into that positivity aspect of it. So we have to start to understand, okay, are we believing the words that we're choosing to use to be able to change that vocabulary? And when we can start to hear it and we actively start to make that conscious effort to make the change, then it becomes a little bit easier to hear it. Now, the way that I like to picture this, because I also love from a visual perspective, these different voices that we have created for ourselves, is I like to call that negative voice our inner critic or our inner gremlin. And when we can give it a name, we can actually see it for what it is. And then when you start to build that new voice, that can be your inner wise one, your inner cheerleader, your inner goddess, whatever you want to call it. And you get to call on her to be able to help you change that vocabulary. And so when your inner gremlin comes up, it has gotten you to where you are today. So thank it. But now you get to know that, okay, I see you for what you are, but I'm going to choose to speak differently.
Wow, Priscilla, feel free to jump in here. I absolutely love this. Okay, first off, you had me at gremlin. So when I
know,
was like,
that's what I
hold
was saying.
up.
It's like, I was already thinking of Stripe.
Yes.
All these years I've been calling Spike. I don't know. But then I was thinking if that's the one, and then the other cute, what was his name? The cute beforehand, right?
Mowgli.
Mowgli. No, Mowgli
Yeah.
was, I'm getting confused with Jungle Book. But
Yeah.
we all know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
That's the cute one. That's the one, but the inner's that one. Yeah. I'm with it. My words are just a little bit too much right now.
I'm right there. I'm with you.
Jessica, you're with us, right?
Totally. Totally.
I wanted to say something separately that I was kind of sitting on here. And as I'm sitting here, I was starting to get a little emotional. I was thinking about earlier, and I might just pause real quick, whatever. But when you're talking about you working with the cancer patients, like my best friend, she's an ovarian cancer survivor. And I think about all the appointments she's talking about. And for her, and I just wanted to say thank you to being able to be somebody else's extra support, because she tells me about all these appointments she has, and even now, and it's difficult because you think I am not in the situation, and I'm thinking how difficult it is for me to just manage things like Danielle talks about. Like I have, some like pain management I'm dealing with, and to have somebody that's kind of, I don't want to say it's not necessarily related in your whatever, but for you to take that extra step for that support for the person and whoever is with them. I mean, it's just priceless and it's beautiful. And thank you.
Honestly, I am so grateful for my patients because it was a constant reminder, especially for me when I was navigating depression. I was wishing away the next 25, 30 years of my career. I was like, I just need to make it to retirement. And then I'll be happy. Then I'll feel successful and stuff because I've done all the work. And I can't believe it took me as long as it did, but it was like a slap in the face where seeing my cancer patients, not everyone makes it to retirement. And that was a huge eye opener for me. And it was very interesting stepping into and being a part of patients' journeys, whether it was for a short period of time or a longer period of time, and being that source of strength. And I even remember I had one of my patients one time. So I'm a very bubbly person when I'm in clinic. I like pop into the operatories. I'm just like, hey, how's it going? How's it? And I realized you kind of have to gauge. So I walk in the exact same way, but then based on the person sitting in front of me, if we need to close the door because tears need to be shed or whatever needs to happen, and then I will be that person for that day. And I had one patient say to me one time, he was like, do you walk into a room like that all the time? And I was like, and at first I didn't understand because that's just who I am. And I was like, no, what do you mean? He's like, you just walked in as if like you have all this energy. And now I feel like you've given me that energy too. And I was like, oh, I do that. And then I started to listen to other patients sharing that. And then they would say, Jess, I hate going to see the dentist, but I love coming to see you. And like, thank you for being so. Priscilla, thank you so much for sharing that, because if I and it's for such short periods of time that I may see them on any given day because they might just be coming in to ask if a symptom that they're experiencing is normal. And for me to be able to give that, then I've done what I needed to do.
Well, I think even just giving them a moment, for you, it may be a moment. For them, it'll be like a memory, And I think it's like those little things that we capture those things and we put them in our little memory bank and stuff. And when we need it, we, pull from it.
That you just hit the nail on the head in regards to how we choose to view those moments and those memories. And I'm going to share another example. So one of actually my colleagues, we used to sit in the same dental society when I lived on the other side of the country, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer, early stages of COVID. And early stages of COVID, depending on the hospital you were at or where in the world you were, you became very isolated. You couldn't have your support system. You couldn't bring a caregiver in because we restricted the individuals who were coming in. And so she had to go through her cancer therapy alone, just like a lot of other people. And she had messaged me because this was when I was still in at the hospital. And she's like, hey, if you've got time on your lunch, can you pass by? And I was like, yeah, not a problem. So I passed by, and there was a couple of times when she was going through her chemotherapy sessions where I was able to like just pop in, and I'd have lunch with her while she sat and she was hooked up to the IV. And again, like you said, like to me, I was just like, okay, well, I need to eat anyway. Might as well go sit with my friend. A year later, she actually just put out an article. I think it came out a couple months ago. And she wrote a couple paragraphs on her she wrote an entire article on her cancer journey, but she wrote a couple paragraphs on me going and spending time with her because she couldn't have her husband or family member or anyone else come to those appointments. And like you said, to me, it was like, okay, well, I got to eat. I got to go to, uh, like, it's going to happen anyway. Okay, I'll just like pop down. But to her, she was like, I don't think you realize how much of an impact it had on us. Now, I want to even add that we don't realize how much of an impact our own inner voice has on us as well. Because we will speak those kind and compassionate words to our friends and our family, to our loved ones during challenging times or even during bright times. And yet, for us, that voice, that inner gremlin, it is so easy to step into and tear us down. Meanwhile, we would never use those hurtful and destructive words with anyone else.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I think it's easy. You know, like I would say sometimes where was I going with this? I had a thought and then I was thinking and then my brain like that. But no, like that's how it is around here.
Yeah.
So, like, when you have like, no, but it's sometimes like past podcasts or past interviews that I do, sometimes I use those to listen back and go, oh yeah, that is me. I can speak like that, or I'm like that. So when I've got history of depression as well. So a lot of times I pull on when I was my stronger self. Sometimes I'll get that, you know, and so that's wonderful to have those, or to have the, you know, I love that you were able to see that article or whatever. You probably didn't even realize it and it hit you maybe by like surprise. And that's like even the best, because we don't know like what kind of impact or where or when. You may just say something someday just to somebody like, hey, Danielle, you're looking really good today, you know, and then don't know what anything that you say, which you do, but look really good today, how it's gonna, you know, impact the rest of the day. Like I have my ex-husband, he is military, but when he was overseas in Kuwait, it was right after 9/11, you know, he would tell me like anything that he gets, like it sticks with them for the whole time. Like, so I made it a choice for myself. He was never going to hear me cry on the phone, because I'll go talk about it with my friends. I'll deal with it, but it would sit with him for the whole entire time. And that could affect, you know, he had to be like on point. And if he has something sitting on there, it could affect, you know, his abilities there. So that was something, you know, that I always kind of stuck with me, you know, when during our time dealing with this being overseas and stuff, that I was just like, I'll deal with it kind of on my own, and I'm not going to put that burden, you know, on him when I can solve it. So it's just that realizing the stuff that we do make an impact, whether or not we believe it or not, we do, because it depends on how the other person's going, how other people will perceive it or take what you say or whatever.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want to piggyback off that too, in ways where we can, within our community, within the tech realm community, for women creatives, like the space is in a lot of ways a way that we can hold each other up and hold each other accountable. And so I love that you say that, Priscilla, because in a lot of times, you know, sometimes we do have to say less to do more, right? Less is more. And I feel like that echoes a lot into this area, especially areas where we're trying to level up or be a mentor, things along those lines. We can't just douse it all out there and be like, okay, take your pick. It's more of I'm going to incrementally speak these things, or it's going to be more of I'm going to say this part, but I'm going to kind of reserve this other part, because I feel like you may thrive better just on those words alone than me, you know, detailing all the things. So I really do like that example, because I do feel like a lot of women in tech, they want to just, you know, put it out there sometimes, especially when they're trying to level up or when they're trying to go for that promotion. Sometimes for them, it's more of I don't want to say desperado move, but it's more of this is everything that I have, like take it all, instead of kind of, sometimes we just need to be a little bit more reserved and a little bit more strategic in how we want to connect, how we want to perceive ourselves, and also how we train our brains. Our brains are not really meant to kind of like free for all all the time, even though us as creatives, we do that a lot more than others. I'm so guilty, definitely sprawl all the time. But it's one of those situations where I realize the pattern, the behavior, and I want to get ahead of it. So I'm just kind of, okay, I'll say this or I'll share this, but then I'll kind of, you know, wait a little bit, see if other people piggyback off of what I'm saying, things along those lines. So I really love that example because I do feel like women need to be more reserved about that, but not necessarily feel like they're being silenced either, right? We don't want to feel like we're bottling ourselves in. That's definitely not what I want to say, but or get to that conclusion. But it is a matter of, strategically playing the right chess moves at the right time, right? Like putting the right pieces on the board. So yeah, that's just kind of hindsight from some of the conversation in and around that.
I think that is so key, and you touched on exactly what I was going to stream into, where it's not silencing your voice. And I think that that's where we need to make sure that there's a differentiation between it. You said the word strategy, and I think that is exactly what it is. It's sometimes timing is key, right? And so you can have all the luck in the world, but if you don't step into that at the right timing, then it doesn't actually appear that way. Same thing holds true with using your voice. There are moments in time where you get to speak up. There are moments in time where you get to sit back and take in everything and see, okay, do I actually want to say something during this period of time? And then there's other times where maybe you pick and choose at that point in time because it's something private that you want to share. And so it doesn't get shared with everyone just yet. So it's not silencing our voice, it's being strategic with how we choose to use it, especially when we're choosing to speak to others. And I really do think that timing does have an important factor in how we choose to bring things up. So, like, for example, let's say it's been really challenging the last couple of weeks, and you get to one of the days and you pulled overtime and you really need to talk to your boss. And so you decide, you know what, I see them, I'm going to corner them, I'm going to go say something. You're tired, you're exhausted. Your boss is probably tired and exhausted as well. Is that going to be the best time to be able to communicate what you want to get across, regardless of what it is? Or do you then pull that person aside at that point and say, hey, let's set up a time to chat at this time in a week from now, and whatever that looks like. And that then gives you the opportunity, instead of feeling like you're flailing or you wish you had prepared more, or you then leave it being like, I didn't say what I wanted to actually say. That gives you the opportunity when you can step into a space and say, okay, and this goes right back to that psychological safety aspect of it. You want to be able to go to a coworker, your superior, and then be able to say, okay, I'm not going to be reprimanded right now or pushed into having this conversation. And that gives me the opportunity to not silence my voice, but to be strategic on how I want to present whatever I'm bringing forth.
Yes, this is so spot on. I hope all you ladies in listening range are taking notes, because pick up what she's putting down, because it's legit. I I really, really like it. I just kind of want to continue that kind of talk in and around the burnout, right? We talked about psychological safety. We've talked about our voice and how much that carries us and others. So I kind of want to what is something you can offer our listeners about experiencing burnout, and how can we kind of I don't want to say turn it around exactly, but just kind of acknowledge it and realize when we need to slow down?
So the way that I like to talk about burnout is to give us an understanding of what burnout is, because I feel like the word gets thrown around a lot. And because we're tired or exhausted, or as we've navigated, like we've just hit the full 1 year mark of being in quote unquote a post-pandemic era. So we're 3 years since the first lockdown that happened. However, we're in a first, so Christmas, like Christmas holiday season 2022 is the first season that we actually got to experience, which means you likely said yes to that extra Christmas party with friends, family, and coworkers, and you probably were super spread thin. So when we look back to the beginning of COVID, our schedules were just a blank slate. It had to get wiped clean. And being humans and creatures of habit, we automatically went back to and said, jam everything in. And so December probably was just that kind of tipping point for some people where burnout was at its all-time high. And so we have to understand what burnout is first, because we may just be exhausted because we just finished a project, but that doesn't mean that you're burnt out. So what is burnout? So burnout, first off, is complex and dynamic. So it doesn't happen overnight, which means it's not going to go away overnight. Burnout can take 1 to 4 years to recover from. And the reason for it is because it requires a lifestyle change. And so it can be broken down into 3 pillars. First one is exhaustion. That can be physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. The second component is mental distance. This is where we start to experience some cynicism or negativity towards people in our lives, the things that we have to do. We may even notice a bit of a detachment from who we are and what we have to do. And then the third component is a feeling of less than. So we feel like we just suck at the end of the day. And that's really hard to navigate because now you're exhausted, but your confidence is shot. So you don't have enough energy to do the things that you want to do. And then you start to look at people around you and you're like, well, they have it together. Why can't I have it together? And I can't believe I have to do this one more thing. And so you can have different types of burnout. You can have caregiver burnout. You can have workplace burnout, relational burnout. And when you start to navigate what is happening, then that gives you the opportunity to say, okay, where do I need to start to make that change? Because it's not going to be just going for a facial that's going to fix that exhaustion, or taking that one bubble bath and now you're going to be like, okay, or a one weekend trip away. That's not going to fix burnout. It's going to be the day-to-days and what you choose to make changes in. So the way that I like to look at it is first starting to recognize, okay, is this what I am experiencing? And then to start to look inward first. And that then has you asking the question of, okay, how do I define rest? What does that look like to me? Am I taking the necessary rest? And when I think about rest, it's not just sleep. It's, are you resting from the people who take energy from you? Are you resting creatively? So are you getting outside and getting yourself in nature? Are you getting into human creativity where it's museums and arts and that aspect of it? Then it's, okay, do you need a rest from social media and from your tech? So it's starting to pay attention to, what does rest actually look like to you? So I like to break it down into 3 pillars. The first one associated with exhaustion is the rest aspect. The second is your mental distance. And this is where, because under this umbrella, you can get compassion fatigue. And that gives you the opportunity to start to navigate, okay, I need to reset my expectations, the expectations that I have put onto others and the expectations that I have on myself. And that then allows me to reset where my priorities are. So you have to protect how much you care towards the people, the work, the things in your life, because let's say you give everything away to work, what do you have left for yourself and your family and your friends at the end of the day? So the second pillar when it comes to mental distance is resetting your expectations and reevaluating your priorities. So where do they need to be? Now, when it comes to expectations and priorities, we live in seasonal changes. So there's going to be times of the year where you just got to put your head down and just hustle and grind, right? But then there's going to be other times of the year, like winter, for example, where we go into these hibernation modes. And that's where you get to build a little bit of self-compassion around, okay, I'm not going to work as fast during this time. I'm going to pace myself a little bit more. This is actually one of the reasons why New Year's resolutions don't work. It's because we're trying to force something in, especially on part of the hemisphere where we have extremely short days during that time. We're trying to force something into, if you live in a world where it's really cold, short days, so there's more dark. How you're not supposed to start something, you're in hibernation. That's why New Year's resolutions just don't work in that sense. And then the last aspect, pillar 3, is how do you start to build up your confidence? And one of the ways that you can do that is to start to build your internal validation. And your internal validation is what you can rely on, and that's your inner voice. It's how you choose to see yourself, how you choose to speak to yourself. It's reminding yourself of your capabilities. And so one thing that I like to teach people is to create an alternative resume or a brag box. And you can do that. It can be an actual physical box. It could be a photo album. I use a wall. So once a year, I like tape things that come up and different experiences that I had, reminders of that this is what I'm capable of. Maybe I did get a comment from someone. And I have this wall that grows throughout the entire year. And then at the end of the year, I take a photo of it and I take everything down and I start it again. So you get to build that up, because now when you've had that really bad sleep, it's a rainy day, you need to create an investment for yourself that you can go and draw on when you've had that bad day. And that's that brag box that you get to create for yourself. And when you start to see the confidence and you start to do the things that build you up, then it becomes easier to recognize, okay, I now trust myself again. I now believe in myself again. I can reset my expectations. I can make myself a priority. The importance around doing all the internal work first, the introspection, is because that then gives you the opportunity to reevaluate what you want. So for the longest time, you probably haven't asked yourself what you want, not just what you need for your day-to-day stuff, but what you truly want. Then, if you still experience burnout after you've done the introspection and you made those changes, then it's not a you problem anymore. It's an environment problem. And that's when you then get to do the extrospection and take a look. Is it work? Is it people? Is it family, friends? What does that look like? What isn't working in the environment? And that's when you get to start to make those changes. Now, something that I want to touch on is at the beginning stages of COVID, the first few months, there was the term that got coined with the Great Resignation that ended up happening. And what ended up happening like a year and a half, 2 years later, is we started to have people experience what we called then the Great Regret. And the reason for that is because people job hopped without giving themselves the opportunity to evaluate why that last environment wasn't working. So you got to the point, yep, you're experiencing burnout. Maybe you're past the point, there's not enough resources, or the people who are there may be toxic as well. But because you just needed to get out of there and you didn't give yourself the time to figure out what you needed, you jumped to the next place. The next place, there's that honeymoon phase for the first 3 to 6 months. And so you sit there and you're like, yeah, this is great. I made the best decision. And the next thing you know, you step back into your old expectations of yourself. You overextend yourself. You keep saying yes to things that's why you had left the other job, because you didn't want to keep saying yes to those things. And so you end up losing yourself again. And so you have to do the internal work. You have to start to understand how to implement boundaries, how to say no to certain things, to recognize, okay, what is the lifestyle that I want to live? And then you go looking for that job. Then you look to see, well, what does that team dynamic look like? What is their communication style? And then you get to then decide, okay, is this a place that I want to be in for however long afterwards? And so when you do the self work and then the environment work, that gives you the opportunity to step out of burnout. And that's why it takes so long, is because you actively have to do the work. And it can take sometimes years to be able to figure out, okay, what is it that I do actually want? But then you get to run experiments the entire time. Instead of thinking, okay, you do one thing, it doesn't work, and then you give up. It's like, okay, no, this experiment didn't work. I got to test out another hypothesis.
Wow, this was so beautiful. Like that was such a great chunk of information. And I do mean chunk because it was a lot of info, but it was so good and so fruitful. You go, girl, because you did this. I love this.
Thank you.
I love the fact that you really take burnout and break it down into these steps, these absolutely realistic and ideal steps that anyone can take in and around burnout. I love that you focus specifically beyond the two realms of both the self and the environment, because a lot of people only take into consideration one, and 9 times out of 10, it's not thinking about the environment, it's thinking about themselves. And so I love that you address that a lot, because there is elements where the environment just isn't cohesive for us. And sometimes we are too afraid to look beyond ourselves, right? To look around us, to be able to ensure that the things that are surrounding us are actually supporting our thesis of self and self-preservance, especially in areas of tech where women are often taken for granted. We were used for our brains and a lot of other assets, unfortunately, instead of the value that we bring to the space and just coherently breathing. So I love the fact that you look at both self and environment. That's a big one for me. Building confidence, that internal validation, how to choose to speak to yourself. That kind of goes right back up there with that, psychologically safe spaces. I love the rest the difference between defining rest and what it looks like. A lot of people consider themselves knowledgeable of themselves enough to know what kind of rest works best for them and what kind of doesn't. And sometimes we get caught up in our own little mouse wheel and we keep saying, no, this is the way, and this is the way, and this is the way. And all we're doing is just keep burning all that energy. And it goes nowhere, right? It doesn't become as fruitful for us. So I want to get off the hamster wheel in some areas, and especially when it comes to rest. And I do think that a lot of women, I mean, Priscilla, I know, like for two of us, I'm just like, yeah, a hamster wheel. Like, woo, get off that thing.
Then we're on the hamster wheel and our kids come by and they just kick it. And we're like, oh, we're not No, but I like am running out of lead. So I'm mechanical pencil to take my notes. So I'm glad that this is a recording and I can review it whenever I want to.
It's the beauty of podcasting.
But the thing that I really liked a lot is that when you're asking like, what do I, after you do all that and you reflect on like, what is it that I, still, was it truly want type of thing rather than the need? Because I do that a lot. I've been doing that a lot lately. Danielle knows of this. And it's nice because, we say that, what do I want? And it reminds me of the Notebook, right? When you say, what do you want? I don't know. Yeah. That's what it is. But I mean, I like Danielle, I love how you broke it down in some ways that are easy for this noggin to digest and stuff. And, but yeah, there's lots of things. And no, that was the main thing. And the brag box was great because it did remind me of, that's similar to what I have a board that I did somewhere. It was called I talked about that one time. It's called a belief board. It's not like a vision board, but it had all those things. And that's another one of those things that I go back and it's not like I'm going to somebody else's words.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I'm going back to my words, and which is where you're talking about the, our own internal validation and us having the confidence and stuff. And it's like, even those times I'm like, I had to have had that confidence at one point if I wrote it down and this is my handwriting and this is saying these things. So then I can go back and I'm like, okay, because that is actual evidence from myself and not me just taking it from somebody else, which is something very difficult. And I think is an always thing that we have to teach or reteach ourselves all the time, especially when we're talking about history of depression or anything like that, because it's going to be an ongoing thing. I mean, I'm this many years to doing, and all the things, but that doing something like that, like a brag or whatever, has been the best thing for me to always come back, because it's like, yeah, if you don't have that for yourself and you can't get it from yourself, it's like nobody can make you have that really, and that's like a lesson I try to tell my daughter. I'm like, I can tell you as much as I want, but if you don't believe it for yourself, it's just words at this point.
Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest difference between external validation and internal validation. So internal validation is reliable, it's consistent, it's you, right? It comes from you. Versus external validation is fleeting, it's few and far between, it's inconsistent. It can come from anyone, and because you don't know when it's coming, that's the problem with relying only on it. That means that external validation is also likes on social media, comments, whatever that is, versus the internal validation, like you said, seeing your own handwriting, seeing what you've written about yourself, the skills that you know. And it's interesting because as we grow older, we're consistently building our skill set on a regular basis of everything that we know. And just because we may not use that one skill as often anymore, doesn't mean that it disappeared. It's still there. So that's why creating the brag box, and if you don't like the word brag box, another word that I like to use, your positive investment container, because it's an investment for a rainy day. Yes. So I like that as well. And it's things that you put in. It doesn't have to necessarily be positive. It can be neutral as well. And that gives you the opportunity to be able to see that on a regular basis. And so you're not just your regular resume, you're everything else. And that alternative resume gives you the opportunity to write down, like I just started making French baguettes. I was tired of always running out of bread. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to make quick and easy French baguettes.
Yeah.
It takes me a couple of minutes the night before. And now I can say I'm a bread maker. Like,
into the recipe, please. We're carbs. We're carb addicts here.
It is the easiest. I'll drop it to you. I'll drop it to you afterwards. Yeah, it is the easiest thing, and just that in itself. Meanwhile, 2 months ago, I'd been like, never. I'd never. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, I make French baguettes.
Yeah, you go. I love this. I also currently rock a brag book. It is a digital version. So I keep a little notebook of notes. It's a special folder. I just literally go to that folder and add something in for the week. Actually set reminders for me to, hey, like at least once every week or once every 2 weeks, you need to write something in there. So it's just like a little prompting that I put in there. But I love coming back to those notes because it is such a confidence booster from where I started versus where I am now. So when I got to, I remember like the first day that I had I have a small company, a business. I have a staff that reflects a lot of women from 5 different countries. And so it is really cool to be able to write down like my first day when I had my first team meeting and I saw all these women that were from all around the world. And they were literally here to work in and around the things that I do. And I was just like, it just blew my mind. I had to take that in for a second. But when I made that note, now I go back to it at least once a year. And I'm like, you remember that feeling. You remember how nervous that was. You remember how scary that was. Now do it again. And do it bigger or do it better or however that we want to scale it up. But I love being able to go back to those memories and reaffirming that inner confidence that you can knock down walls, you can create opportunities, you can be bigger than the moment, whatever moment that was last year. So yeah, I really highly recommend that. If anyone else is not already doing that, start today. It takes all of less than 2 minutes of your life to literally start this little practice and set a reminder for yourself, whether it's in your phone or on your refrigerator, on those post-its in the bathroom. Just remind yourself that you can do that. One little positive moment, I feel like totally helps build and bridge more areas for ourselves internally that we have that inner confidence to do bigger and greater things.
Well, it reminds me of scrapbooking. Like when I was younger, I found an article, and I think I might have shared this with you, Danielle, when I have it in the 8th grade with the bangs and little 8th grade me, and I won a poetry contest back then.
Oh
and then that
gosh.
sent me to reminded me of, I was going to be entered in a thing, and then, being in a co-author book, and it's nice to see those little steps, or even thinking back of before we wrote this stuff down and think about, like our timeline of our successes and stuff. I read in a book somewhere, they were talking about that, writing down and not even necessarily putting them in, you could put it in a line if you can think far back, but just, just dropping all the successes and stuff that you've done, or the things that you're proud of, whether or not they're small, like, I potty trained my son, or, or whatever. And it's great. Even those little things will, really good, right?
I love this. Oh man, all the feels.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting really close to time, so I kind of want to, Priscilla, is there any follow-up questions that you want to ask before we move into our flash questionnaire to wrap up the show?
Not right now, but if I think of them, I'm going to reach out and I'm going to go.
I love it. Okay.
Baguette recipe.
Right, the bread. I know, maybe we can like spread that around. I think that's a great idea. For those of us who want to continue to follow you to purchase your book, we will be sharing all of your information in our show notes. But for those who just want to continue to follow you socially, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can check me out. My main ones are LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok, all under the same name at Dr. Jessica Metcalf.
Wonderful. You heard it here, folks. I'm super excited about diving into this book. I'll be doing some screenshot reading for myself and sharing a little bit of the thoughts that I get from this. But I am so excited from everything we talked about today. Is just so reaffirming. And I hope it reaffirms a lot of, inspires more women to kind of step out and up. I highly encourage you to purchase this book. And then, of course, I also want to just leave like those deep words of thought, finding your tribe. That's what this podcast is always about. It's always about creating that safe space so that women can feel encouraged, empowered, and educated to keep finding their tribe and thrive in it. So I hope that's what you're able to do by listening to us today. All right, I think we're ready to go straight into our flash questionnaire. Priscilla, would you like to do the honors today, or would you prefer me to go do the honors today? Look, the points. Yes, I was ready. Okay, so the flash questionnaire is literally we give you a random question. You give us the first thing that pops into your mind, and either way it goes, you win.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, here we go. Something new you've learned in the past year, whether a life lesson, hobby, or fun fact.
I'm going to say French baguettes.
Yes, bring us the bread.
Yeah.
Bring us the baguettes.
I'm so proud. I'm legit so proud of myself for that. So I
want to know how many times we can bring up French baguette in all these questions. Just answer French baguette all the way.
I love it. That is a life skill for real, because I feel like that is sustainable. Okay, so second question, favorite vacation getaway spot.
Ooh. Okay, so I am very much an island person, which is one of the reasons why I moved to Vancouver Island. Honestly, any island, and I'm happy with, whether it's in the winter or the summer. So a favorite location would be small island vibes in general. It's just a slower pace to begin with because I run a mile a minute all the time. And so I need that external aspect to remind me you can take a deep breath.
I love that. Okay, sweet snacks or savory snacks?
Ooh, depending on the time of the month. Savory or sweet. I just listen to what my stomach says. It's like, this is what you're craving right now. And I'm like, oh.
Mine was peppermint Kit Kats, like literally 2 days ago. Like, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. And so it's one of those where moving through burnout for me was a huge aspect in listening to what my body was asking for. And so now it's so fascinating. When you listen, it does tell you what it needs.
I love that. Okay, Harry Potter or Star Wars?
Oh, can I say both?
Yes. Of course you can say both. Of course. Okay, digital books or physical books?
So, physical books for fantasy fiction, but audio books for nonfiction books.
Oh, wow. I think she's our first guest that's ever broken it down in that category.
We've never had it like that. I know when I answered when I was in, I said both, but I mean, I like the way that you did it.
Yeah.
That is really interesting. So for sci-fi, is it because you need the textual, like you need to
I do. I like just getting into the book itself. I can't listen to audiobooks that are fiction because I like hearing my own like voice through my imagination in that sense.
Right.
This is nonfiction books. If I have it, it reminds me of textbook, and then I'm sitting there and it's too much. So an audiobook for me is better in that sense.
Like my favorite. So cool. That's like one of my favorite answers.
Yes, I mean, really, that was like, wow, okay. Okay, if you could go back in time, where would you go and whom would you see?
Oh, I would probably go to Old Macedonia. So I have a huge thing for Greek and Roman mythology.
Wow.
So I've taken like multiple classics courses, and one of the interesting courses was Alexander the Great. So probably somewhere within like Macedonia back in the day, and just to kind of see the systems and everything. That's huge historian in that sense.
I love how you gasped.
Yeah.
I was like, what is it? I mean, this question got me on the seat of my. And you had me at French baguette, but then after that, everything.
Yes.
I'm like, I want to shut it down. I don't want to ever ask anybody else anymore.
I love it. Okay, last two questions are your love language or languages.
Love language. So I'm currently dating right now, and I just had a conversation about this, and this is so funny. So it's based on, how busy I am in my life. Quality time is a big one for me, but then physical touches as well. And so that's why I feel like I've got a little bit of everything. Some of them are lower, like gifts and stuff sit significantly lower, but I'd say quality time, words of affirmation, and physical touch, and they kind of like sit at a wavelength.
Yeah.
They're quite it's like a living breathing document essentially that happens over a period of time.
That's dating for you. Oh man, go girl. I mean, today it's gonna be touch, and tomorrow is gonna be words of affirmation. Yes, I relate to that. Last question: best part of being a grown-up.
You can make your own bread.
Yeah. Well, it's funny.
Your audio.
First off, food came in because I was like, you can just. So I'm very grateful for my mom growing up as a kid in the sense that there were no rules when it came to food, in the sense that there were days where she allowed us to have dessert first and we still had our meal. And then me and my brother would each have a day of the week where we had to cook our own meal because we had to forward plan in regards to grocery shopping. And so as an adult, I love the fact that you don't have to put restrictions on yourself. So it's just like, I had a client of mine who said, so I had Snickers for breakfast the other day, and like, I was okay with it. I'm like, as you should. If that's what you want, sure. Don't make it necessarily a habit, but I mean, if that's what you want, go for it.
I love that. Oh, watch, my kids are gonna do it today. Watch, just because we put it in the air, man. I love it. I absolutely love this. Oh my gosh. Well, needless to say, you passed with flying colors.
Yay.
Savannah, tell her what she's won. You've gotten through a full podcast episode with MTG. Thank you so much for your value, your insight, just your laughter. Everything today has been so fruitful. So I really hope that you enjoy re-listening to this. And also for everyone else out there in listening range, thank you. Thank you for being a devout listener. For those who've been around for a while, thank you for just joining us for the first time. If you've been here never before, this is your first time listening, welcome. We're going to continue having more conversations in and around mastering. So just be prepared for that as we go into more of season 5 of the More Than Graphics podcast. And let's just kind of wrap this up. Thanks for listening to us, the More Than Graphics podcast. We invite you to subscribe and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Send us your feedback on Facebook or Twitter on how our life stories and virtual safe spaces are helping educate, empower, or encourage you. As always, visit our website at mtgthepodcast.com and subscribe to our emails for exclusive behind the scenes moments like Clubhouse happening twice a month. We can still say that twice a month at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You may also see us floating around in spaces around LinkedIn. So just be aware and we'll stay subscribed so you'll get the latest news about where we're going to be next. So until next time, everyone, thanks for watching.
Thank you.
And just like that, the episode ends, but the convo has just begun.
Thanks for listening to the MTG podcast.
We want to hear from you. If you enjoyed our podcast, give it a review on your listening app of choice.
Continue to follow us across MTG socials.
And look out for bonus content releases throughout the year. This podcast is produced by Octane Design Studios.
Until next